Welcome back to the channel Rare Coins History that brings you the stories hiding in plain sight, those forgotten coins in your pocket, your piggy bank, or that old drawer you haven't opened in years. Today, we're turning our attention to a coin that millions of people have held, spent, and ignored without a second thought. That we're talking about the Jefferson nickel. Specifically, the 1975 Jefferson nickel. A coin worth just 5 cents on the surface, but under the right conditions, it could be worth far, far more. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll learn how one seemingly ordinary nickel could be hiding a jaw-dropping secret, and what you need to look for to spot one of these rare gems yourself. Let's set the scene. It's 1975. The Vietnam War is drawing to a close, gas is under $1, and people are listening to Queen, Led Zeppelin, and Elton John on vinyl. At the U.S. Mint, production continues on millions of coins to fuel the growing economy, and among them is the 5-cent piece featuring none other than Thomas Jefferson. Now, the Jefferson nickel has been in circulation since 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel, and it's remained largely unchanged for decades. On the obverse, we see a side profile of Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, facing left. The words, "In God We Trust," and "Liberty" wrap around his head, with the date, 1975, pressed just to the right. Flip it over, and there it is, Jefferson's legendary home, Monticello. It's clean, simple, and unmistakably American, but what makes the 1975 version of this nickel so interesting? It's not about the design. It's about the details. The mint mark. The condition. And the errors. Most Jefferson nickels from 1975 were minted in Philadelphia and Denver. The ones from Denver carry a small D mint mark on the front, just beside the bust of Jefferson. Philadelphia didn't use a mint mark that year. But regardless of the mint, one thing is certain: these nickels were made by the millions and meant for everyday use. So why would any 1975 Jefferson nickel be worth more than face value? It all comes down to rarity, condition, and the most thrilling factor of all, minting errors. You see, while most of these nickels are circulating in everyday condition, scratched, worn, and tossed into change jars, some have survived in remarkably preserved states. We're talking about coins that were never circulated, never touched, carefully stored away in rolls, bags, or collector albums. These high-grade coins can carry significant value for collectors, especially if they're graded MS-65 or higher, but the real excitement comes from the extremely rare errors. Some 1975 Jefferson nickels have been discovered with off-center strikes, where part of the design is missing because the coin wasn't aligned properly when it was struck. Others have been found with double dies, where the image appears to be duplicated slightly, an extremely desirable feature in the eyes of collectors. And then there are planchet errors. Imagine a nickel struck on the wrong type of metal. A coin that's supposed to be 75% copper and 25% nickel, but instead is struck on a penny or dime planchet. These kinds of errors are not just rare, they're 1 in a million. The rarer the error and the better the condition, the higher the value skyrockets. Now picture this: you're going through a handful of old coins, maybe inherited from a grandparent or found at a yard sale. You spot a 1975 Jefferson nickel. You take a closer look and notice something strange. Maybe the date looks slightly doubled, or the coin is thinner or lighter than usual. You decide to send it off to a grading service like PCGS or NGC. It comes back with a rare error, and it's graded at the top of the scale. That's not just a lucky find, that's a jackpot. And here's where the story gets amazing. One of these rare 1975 Jefferson nickels, featuring a minting error and preserved in exceptional, uncirculated condition, shocked collectors and sold for a stunning $70,000. Yes, you heard that right. A nickel. Just 5 cents in value. Sold for $70,000. So the next time you come across some old change, don't overlook those nickels. Take a close look. Check the date. Look for a mint mark. Inspect the details carefully. Because there's always the chance you could be holding one of the rarest and most valuable nickels ever made. Today, we're diving into a coin that's probably passed through millions of hands, spent without a second thought, but for some lucky collectors, it turned out to be worth a small fortune. We're talking about the 1964 Jefferson nickel. That's right, just a regular old 5-cent piece. Or is it? By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what makes certain 1964 nickels incredibly rare and valuable, and what signs to look for in your own pocket change that could mean the difference between 5 cents and a life-changing surprise. Let's travel back in time to 1964. It was a year of transition and turbulence in America. The Beatles took the country by storm, the Civil Rights Act was signed into law, and the nation was still mourning the loss of President Kennedy. Amid all of that, the United States Mint was dealing with a national coin shortage, especially in silver coins, and they were working overtime to keep up with demand. That year, more Jefferson nickels were produced than ever before. In fact, the 1964 nickel holds the record as one of the most massively minted coins in U.S. history. Between the Philadelphia and Denver mints, billions were struck. Yes, billions with a B. So why, out of all those coins, would any single 1964 nickel be worth more than a few cents? That's where the story gets fascinating. Let's start with the basics. On the obverse, or front of the coin, you'll see a familiar face, Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, looking left. His profile is classic and dignified. On the reverse side, you'll find Monticello, Jefferson's stately Virginia home, printed with clean architectural detail. These nickels have been in circulation since 1938, and while the design stayed relatively consistent, what makes some stand out are the fine details, especially in 1964. Here's what you need to look out for. First, check for the mint mark. In 1964, nickels were made in Philadelphia, which used no mint mark, and Denver, which used a small d on the right side of Monticello. While the Denver Mint produced a massive number of coins, it's not just about how many were made, but how many survived in perfect condition. This is where it gets interesting. Due to the high production rate, many of the dies used to strike the 1964 nickels wore out quickly. That led to weaker designs, blurry lettering, and inconsistent finishes. But some coins were struck early in the process, with fresh dies, creating extremely sharp and detailed versions. Those nickels, if preserved correctly, are already valuable, but there's another layer: mint errors. Some 1964 nickels have been found with dramatic double dies, where parts of the lettering or even Jefferson's profile appear duplicated. Others have been discovered struck off-center, or on incorrect metal planchets, which happened when the coin was mistakenly stamped on a blank meant for a different denomination. These mistakes are rare, and when paired with a high-grade condition, they become treasures. Here's where collectors lose their minds: a 1964 Jefferson nickel with a deep strike, a visible mint error, and a glowing, uncirculated finish, graded by services like PCGS or NGC, can command attention at major coin auctions. So, let's paint the picture. You're going through an old coin jar. Maybe it's one passed down through the family, or something you picked up at a flea market. You notice a 1964 nickel, it's shinier than the rest, maybe the details are razor sharp. You flip it over and spot an unusual doubling in the lettering or Monticello's columns. Your heart skips a beat. You send it in for grading. It comes back with a top-tier mint state grade and confirmation of a rare die error. Suddenly, you're not holding an ordinary nickel. You're holding something extraordinary, and now, the moment you've been waiting for. One remarkable 1964 Jefferson nickel, featuring a rare mint error and preserved in flawless condition, recently made headlines when it sold at auction for a staggering $82,000. Yes, you heard that correctly. A coin worth just 5 cents, sold for $82,000. So next time you're sifting through your change or flipping through an old coin album, don't ignore the nickels. Especially the 1964s. Check for errors. Look for perfect condition. That little coin could be your next big discovery. Today, we're shining the spotlight on a coin you've probably seen dozens of times before, the Jefferson nickel. But not just any nickel, we're diving deep into the story of the 1985 Jefferson nickel. That's right, a coin that's barely 40 years old, still in circulation, and often completely overlooked. But here's the twist: under the right circumstances, one of these nickels could be worth more than a brand new car, or even more than a college education. Stick around, because we're going to show you exactly what to look for, and reveal just how much a rare 1985 Jefferson nickel has sold for. You won't believe your ears. Let's set the scene. It's 1985. Ronald Reagan is in the White House, Michael Jordan has just entered the NBA, and cassette tapes are blasting through boomboxes across America. It's a time of innovation, pop culture, and optimism. But while the world is grooving to Madonna and watching Back to the Future, something ordinary is happening at the U.S. Mint, the creation of the humble 5-cent coin. Now, on the surface, there's nothing unusual about the 1985 Jefferson nickel. Just like previous years, the obverse features the strong profile of Thomas Jefferson, America's third president. On the reverse, we see his historic Virginia home, Monticello, with its neoclassical architecture and proud symmetry. The inscriptions remain classic, E pluribus unum, United States of America, and of course, 5 cents. But when it comes to coin collecting, appearances can be deceiving. Because while millions of 1,985 nickels were struck at both the Philadelphia, no mint mark, and Denver, D mint mark, mints, not all of them were created equal. That's where the magic begins. Let's talk about what makes a seemingly ordinary 1985 Jefferson nickel so special. First, condition is everything. Coins that were never used in circulation, known as uncirculated or mint state coins, are far more valuable than ones that have been rattling around in pockets for decades. These high-grade coins are smooth, sharp, and full of luster, but even more valuable than a perfect coin? A perfect coin with an error. That's right. Mistakes from the mint are a collector's dream. In 1985, some Jefferson nickels were struck with incredible and extremely rare errors. These include double die obverse, where parts of the image, like the date or lettering, appear to be doubled. Off-center strikes, where the coin wasn't aligned properly during minting, leading to an uneven or crescent-shaped design. Clipped planchets, where a portion of the coin is literally missing due to an error during the cutting process, and even wrong planchet errors, where a nickel is struck on a blank intended for another denomination, like a penny or a dime. These kinds of coins are 1 in a million. And when they're found in high-grade condition, graded MS-65, MS-66, or even MS-67 by services like PCGS or NGC, they become the holy grail for collectors. Now, imagine this. You're sorting through a roll of old nickels. Most of them are scratched up, discolored, and worn down. But then, one catches your eye. The details are crisp. The shine is still there. And something about the date or lettering just looks off. You grab a magnifier. Your heart starts racing. You send it off to a professional grading service. Weeks later, it comes back, uncirculated, full mint luster, and confirmed as a rare double die or off-metal strike. That's not just luck. That's a once-in-a-lifetime find. And now, the moment you've been waiting for. One such 1985 Jefferson nickel, with a rare minting error and in pristine, uncirculated condition, was recently sold for a jaw-dropping $72,000. Yes, you heard that right. A nickel, just 5 cents, sold for $72,000. So the next time you get change back at the grocery store or dig through that old box of coins in your attic, take a closer look. Especially at the 1985 nickels. You never know when one small detail could make a huge difference. Today, we're taking a closer look at a coin that many people have touched, spent, and forgotten over the decades, a small, silver-toned 5-cent piece that might just be one of the most important wartime coins ever made. We're talking about the 1943 Jefferson nickel. It may only say 5 cents on the front, but under the right conditions, it could be worth thousands of dollars. And one incredibly rare example shocked the collecting world when it sold for a fortune. But before we reveal just how much that coin went for, let's rewind to the story behind it. The year is 1943. World War II is raging across Europe and the Pacific. Back home in the United States, every resource is being directed toward the war effort: steel, rubber, even everyday metals used in coinage. That's right, even nickels had to change. You see, the standard nickel before 1942 was made of 75% copper and 25% nickel. But nickel was a critical material needed for weapons and armor, so the U.S. Mint had to get creative. Starting in late 1942, and continuing through 1945, the Jefferson nickel was made with a very different alloy, 35% silver, 56% copper, and 9% manganese. Yes, you heard that right. From 1942 to 1945, U.S. nickels were made with actual silver. This is why these coins are often referred to as war nickels. And the 1943 version is one of the most iconic in that short-lived series. The silver content alone gives it an edge in collector circles. But it's not just about the metal, there's much more that makes this coin a true piece of American history. Let's talk about the design. On the front, you have the same dignified profile of Thomas Jefferson, facing left. The words, "In God We Trust," and "Liberty" appear to his sides, along with the year, 1943. Turn it over, and there's Monticello, his famous Virginia estate, etched in clean, classical lines. But here's the detail that serious collectors love: the mint mark. During the war years, the U.S. Mint did something unusual. To help people identify the silver nickels, they placed a large mint mark above Monticello on the reverse of the coin. You'll see a big P for Philadelphia, D for Denver, or an S for San Francisco. And for the first time ever, Philadelphia coins actually had a mint mark, something that hadn't happened before. That mint mark is your first clue when hunting for valuable 1943 nickels. But the real treasure lies in a combination of things: rarity, condition, and minting errors. You see, not all 1943 nickels are worth a fortune. Most are worth just a few dollars if they're worn or heavily circulated. But if you find one in uncirculated or mint state condition, that's when the value begins to climb. Coins with a brilliant shine, no scratches, and sharp detail, graded MS65 or higher, are rare, and highly sought after. And then, there are the errors. Some 1943 nickels were mistakenly struck on the wrong planchet, meaning they were minted on a blank intended for a different coin, like a penny or even a foreign coin. Others were double struck, or struck off-center, or show signs of die breaks, flaws that occurred during the minting process. These rare mistakes, combined with the historical silver composition and a pristine condition, send collectors into a frenzy. Now imagine this: you're sorting through an old box of coins in your grandparents' attic. Among the dusty pennies and dull dimes, you find a 1943 Jefferson nickel. You take a closer look and see that large mint mark over Monticello, a P, perhaps. You flip it in the light, and it still has a bright, silvery glow. It feels heavier, richer. You decide to get it graded by a professional service like PCGS or NGC. It comes back with a top-tier grade, mint state 67, and the grading experts confirm it has a rare planchet error. Suddenly, this little nickel in your hand isn't just pocket change, it's a collector's dream. And now, here's the moment we've all been waiting for. One extremely rare 1943 Jefferson nickel, struck on the wrong planchet, in pristine, uncirculated condition, was sold at auction for a jaw-dropping $88,000. That's right. A 5-cent coin, worth $88,000. So don't overlook those old nickels. Especially from the wartime years. They're more than just coins, they're pieces of history, and in some cases, they're pure silver treasure.